Let's go ahead and bring in Morgan Ortagus, former State Department spokesperson and founder of Polaris National Security. Morgan, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
First thing I want to ask you about, if we can pull up this full statement from President Macron of France, we'll talk about what he said. Quote, the paradox would be that, overcome with panic, we believe we are just America's followers. The question Europeans need to answer, is it in our interest to accelerate a crisis on Taiwan? No. The worst thing would be to think that we Europeans must become followers on this topic and take our cue from the U.S. agenda and a Chinese overreaction. Morgan, is France turning their backs on us?
This is probably the lowest in relationship with the United States and France coming from his comments. I mean, what Tom Cotton and Mike Gallagher just said, it's pretty unconscionable that Macron would not only make these statements, that he would fly to China and do so. Remember, he's doing this in the backdrop of a few things going on. First of all, you have a genocide, an ongoing genocide against the Uyghur people in the Xinjiang region of China. You see China's territorial expansion. You hear the rhetoric from all corners around the world, what they are saying, what their plans are for a new led world order with Putin that's going to put autocracy and communism, the Chinese Communist Party at the front of that new world order that they want to lead. So for France to do this, especially at a moment whenever you have seen the United States so behind Europe in the Russian aggression and the war in Ukraine, France has been, let's be honest, France has been doing the minimum whenever there is a war on their own continent. And this is something that I've talked about on this show and have warned for quite some time, that I don't know that the French or Germans are going to be with us in a China fight. Macron has clearly put that now on display for the entire world to see. And so the United States must ask ourselves, who are our friends, who are our allies in the region that would be in a potential fight? And those are the relationships that we need to invest in. So I don't know if Macron was doing this, because he's still angry at AUKUS when the United States got the submarine deal and the French didn't. That's AUKUS is the alliance of Australia, the United Kingdom, the United States, and we got a major submarine deal. I think he's still quite sore over that. This could be part of it. And then just one final point, the Biden administration, I hear this from leaders in Latin America, I hear this from leaders in the Middle East. Every time I speak at a conference, leaders from other parts of the world tell me that the Biden administration is ignoring them in favor of, only focusing or singularly focusing on Europe and what's going on with Ukraine. And while that's incredibly important to spend all this time focused on Europe, but to lose France in any sort of potential fight against China, I mean, what have they been doing from a diplomatic perspective?
Well, Morgan, I just want to make sure our viewers don't think their eyes were messing with them. That was the Easter Bunny at the podium at the White House press briefing. That was happening as we are discussing this red threat rising and how we are responding to it. Morgan, your former boss, Mr. Secretary Mike Pompeo, joined us last hour. I asked him if he agrees with Senator Lindsey Graham, who said he supports U.S. troops in Taiwan. His response.
The United States is going to have to be all in to protect American interests throughout the Pacific. That includes Taiwan, Japan, our friends and allies in Australia, South Korea. This isn't the American tradition. Let's get deterrence right, and we won't have to face that question.
So to be clear, that's a yes.
Yeah, we should do everything we can.
All in, he said. Troops in Taiwan.
Yeah, I was with Secretary Pompeo whenever we revived meetings that started in the Bush administration called the Quad. There's a lot of diplomatic speak today, but essentially we were focusing at the State Department when I worked for him. Every single day we were focused on China or Iran. We certainly had the whole world under our belt, but there wasn't a day that went by that we weren't thinking and plotting and strategizing about how to isolate the Chinese Communist Party and their influence from the region. This is an existential threat to the United States. Listen, just look at what Xi Jinping says. We've been ignoring for about 20 years. Until the Trump administration, we had blinders on. When Vice President Biden was in charge of the China portfolio for President Obama, we saw the expansion of Chinese aggression in the South China Sea, the building of the fake islands. We saw security clearance information from American souls. IP theft was also continued to be stolen. And so we have seen both parties, to be fair, until the Trump administration for about 20 years, really really ignored what was going on. And when Xi Jinping came to power, he took that rhetoric and he sort of lit it on fire, Sandra. And we have to take the Chinese Communist Party at their word. When Xi Jinping says that they are likely to invade in order to secure Taiwan, and that they're willing to do it militarily, and when they're doing these drills, and when they are meeting, when Xi Jinping is meeting with Putin and saying there's going to be a change in the world order that the world hasn't seen in 100 years, we need to believe him, and we need to understand how that affects every person who's watching this show right now, how it affects our everyday lives.
And Morgan, real quick, last 20 seconds here. If we can pull up what the Wall Street Journal had a little editorial of here. They're kind of taking a shot at Macron, essentially saying that Mr. Macron wants the U.S. to ride to Europe's rescue against Russian aggression, but apparently take a vow of neutrality against Chinese aggression in the Pacific. That kind of goes with what you were saying about Ukraine. It essentially feels like they're going to turn their backs on us when it comes to anything involving China, right?
It's unconscionable, and I do think, though, that there are plenty of good leaders in Europe who should stand up and say that Emmanuel Macron does not speak for the whole of Europe and that he doesn't speak for them, and I hope we see that in the coming days. If not, what is the Biden administration doing, spending all their time in Europe only to have these guys spit in our face?
Yep. Former State Department spokesperson Morgan Ortagus, thank you for your time.